Washington, I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle. We do have a big show for you tonight. We're going to reveal powerful forces here in America that is keeping that illegal immigrant caravan at our border from falling apart. It was actually being disbanded. What happened? And why do we allow individual lower court judges to upend our border security, our sovereignty, and the president's constitutional authority? I'll offer my solution in tonight's Angle. Plus, the high cost of socialized medicine. Little Alfie Evans' parents have been trying to liberate the 2-year-old from a UK hospital. Why won't they let him go? And Kanye West blows up the internet supporting Trump while the left goes into a volcanic meltdown. We'll get into it all in our Seen and Unseen segment with Raymond Arroyo. And the media are furiously trying to spin a GOP congressional victory in an off-year special election as a loss for Trump. We'll expose their real agenda. And another untested social experiment is underway as girls begin joining the Boy Scouts. But at what cost? An Eagle Scout responds. But first, the tyranny of the judiciary. That's the focus of tonight's Angle. Yesterday, a FEC, John D. Bates, overturned President Trump's decision to end the DACA program. The judge was appointed by George W. Bush, ruled that Trump's action was arbitrary and capricious because the Department of Homeland Security failed adequately to explain its conclusion that the program was unlawful. Well, this judge ordered the administration to continue to accept new DACA applicants, but he's delaying the implementation for 90 days so that the Trump folks can rewrite their basis for ending DACA. Now, if this ruling stands, it could actually mean the tripling of the number of illegals ultimately protected by this Obama-era program. DACA would then be open to an additional 1.2 million more people, according to an analysis by the Migration Policy Institute. And that's on top of the nearly 700,000 already protected by the program. The very idea that one unelected district court judge could have this type of power should outrage every American. I don't think any serious legal scholar really thinks that President Obama had the constitutional authority to wave his noble hand and grant 700,000 young people de facto citizenship. I mean, remember, he gave them the right to work here without fear of any deportation, all by this executive action. And remember, when the Democrats had the majority in Congress, they failed to pass broad-based amnesty. So Obama, through his Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano, decided he's going to do it on his own. And this was done despite the misgivings of his own Justice Department. But nevertheless, Obama pushed it as far as he could.
The bill hasn't really changed. The need hasn't changed. It's still the right thing to do. The only thing that has changed, apparently, was the politics. It makes no sense to expel talented young people who, for all intents and purposes, are Americans.
Yeah, that whole citizenship thing, all those millions of people who came here legally to get citizenship, that's all a formality, Mr. President. What President Trump and his administration did by rescinding DACA was to actually restore the rule of law and return immigration decisions and the fate of those DACA kids to the constitutionally appropriate branch of government, Congress. Yet district court judges from San Francisco to Brooklyn and now here in Washington, D.C., have stymied this president at every turn. This is totally absurd and an abuse of power. Now, you might be asking yourself how we got here. And how did we get to a point where people from foreign countries believe that they can crash our borders, game our immigration system, and then ultimately just wander freely in our country? Well, the answer? One out-of-control judge in California had a lot to do with it. Her name is Judge Dolly Gee. And in 2014, we saw, remember, a mass influx of illegals crossing our southwest border. And remember, the Obama Department of Homeland Security placed a lot of those illegal immigrant family units in detention facilities. Well, in 2015, Judge Gee ruled that the government could not detain the children in centers set up all those centers set up in Texas because the judge ruled they were not safe and sanitary enough. And she based that decision on this 1997 settlement agreement. It was called the Flores case that required that unaccompanied alien minors be released into the country without delay. And this Judge Gee went even further, ruling that not only should the minors be released into the United States once apprehended, but their parents should be allowed to go free as well. So again, that one district judge in California is responsible for the release of an estimated 107,000 unaccompanied minors into the interior of this country since the year 2016. And then also most of the 167,000 apprehended family units released as well. Again, think this through. One district court judge has forever changed our cultural, demographic, and economic, perhaps national security landscape. One judge. That is not what our founders intended. Now, let's face it. The runaway judiciary has become, in effect, a new flank of the resistance. They're taking away your power. And it's time for Congress to circumscribe the authority and the reach of these district court judges. Think about national health care policy, immigration policy, national security. These matters are all beyond the scope and understanding, frankly, of a district court judge. It's like giving a local mayor control over U.S. foreign policy. It's ridiculous. Remember, the Constitution, Article 3, Section 1, states the following. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may, from time to time, ordain and establish. And it continued. Now, what does that mean? That means the Congress can regulate the lower court's jurisdiction. And it's time they do. In fact, they've done so in the past. Congress should immediately pass legislation establishing that any cases touching on important national security or national economic concerns should be referred to the appeals courts or the Supreme Court directly without delay. Or at the very least, constitutional determinations of the type we're seeing in this DACA case, they should be referred to the appellate judges, three-judge panel, or maybe even the en banc panel of the whole court. They're far more knowledgeable in constitutional matters and far more knowledgeable on all these matters, God bless them, than the district court judges. The tyranny, especially of the district court bench, has to end. And the people's will should no longer be held hostage to the capricious whims of one ill-equipped, disgruntled, life-tenured jurist. And that's the angle. Joining me now for reaction are three esteemed attorneys in San Francisco, Harmeet Dillon, RNC National Committee woman, in Orlando, Scott Bolden, a Democratic strategist, and with me here in Washington, Saul Weisenberg, cute and cuddly as always, who is Deputy Independent Counsel in the Bill Clinton investigation. Yeah, Scott, you're not here. Harmeet's here. You leave me with grouchy Saul. I'm just teasing. I love Saul. I'm just teasing.
Saul.
Oh, no. Good to see all of you. Let's start with you, Harmeet. When we see an entire federal program either struck down or, in this case, a decision invalidated in 90 days, if the judge isn't satisfied, it'll be invalidated. That's a lot of power for one unelected district court judge residing in Washington, D.C.
That's right, Laura, but he isn't the first one. He's the third in the country. As you mentioned in your opening, Judge Alsup in San Francisco did it, and a judge in Brooklyn. But what's interesting to note for your viewers is that there was a federal judge in Maryland who ruled the opposite way. And so what's wrong with this whole scheme is that one district judge is now overruling basically another district judge, and this scheme of nationwide injunctions is inviting litigants to forum shop. And so, of course, they're all running to the three most liberal jurisdictions in America: Northern District of California, Eastern District of New York, and District of Columbia. And, you know, that is not how our courts were meant to be. Our courts were meant to have a hierarchy, as you mentioned, and only a superior court, not an equivalent court, should be allowed to do this. And President Trump has been subject to 22 nationwide injunctions. That's more than any other president in history.
So that's a district court, right? A district court judge, Harmeet? A district court judge.
A district court judge
sitting in a courthouse, an injunction that affects the whole country. That's just wild. That's just
and
wild.
This didn't used to be a thing. It didn't used to be a thing. For
No.
175 years of our country's history, there were no nationwide injunctions. This is a recent fashion, and it's out of control, Laura.
Scott, let's go to you. Robert Bork talked about the political seduction of the law. And he had given lots of speeches over the years about, and he disagreed with Justice Scalia on this, about limiting the federal court's jurisdiction because of the allure, the political allure that a lot of these judges end up getting tangled up with. Both they can on the left and the right. So his view is, sadly, you can't trust a lot of these judges to just apply the law faithfully and the Constitution faithfully. They end up legislating from the bench. Your take?
My take is, I don't know what you all are talking about. There are three branches of government. There's no federal district judge that overrules another federal district judge. The checks and balances of the Constitution, which, Laura, in your angle, you want to just change because you disagree with the positions taken by these judges.
Thank you very much.
You want to change it. But here's the checks and balances. The DOJ and anyone else who loses at the federal district court level, here's the thing. They can go to the Court of Appeals or the Ninth Circuit or whatever circuit. They can even go to the Supreme Court. So you don't have to stay at the federal district court level. And this idea that somehow issues of national importance or import have to go to more qualified judges.
Tell
me what Court of Appeals judge is more qualified than a federal district court judge.
A district court judge spends most of his time or her time figuring out, the sentencing guidelines and how they apply. I clerked on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. These are like sentencing guidelines cases, ERISA cases. I want to go to you, Saul. I know you like Bates.
And you know where the majority of the Court of Appeals cases come from? Those judges come from the federal district court.
Yeah, we get that. But in the Constitution, you could do away, the Congress could do away with all these courts if they wanted to. Saul, you like Bates. You know him because he worked for Ken Starr. In this case, though, he goes beyond the Brooklyn judge or the Ninth Circuit District Court judge in California by saying not only must you restore the current DACA, but you must start taking new applications.
In actuality, it is a very narrow opinion. What Judge Bates did, and by the way, Judge Bates is not your normal district court judge. He was appointed to the FISA court by John Roberts. He's respected throughout the judiciary. Doesn't mean his opinion is correct, but he's not one of these wacky California judges like Alsop, who clerked for William O. Douglas. And what he actually said was very narrow. He said, this, under the Administrative Procedures Act, the government did not adequately explain why they think that Obama lacked the Constitution.
Here's the explanation. Obama was acting as a legislator. That's basically what Sessions said in his letter. Obama was acting as a super legislator because his Democrats couldn't do amnesty. So Obama, contrary to what his own Justice Department told him to do, he decided, I'm just going to do this by executive fiat. He created de facto amnesty for 700,000.
And all Judge Bates said,
that was an outrage.
All Judge Bates said was, you got 90 days to come up with a better reason.
Judge Bates wasn't just saying that. He also talked about the people relying on DACA and that the
well, that's because that's part of the law. That's part of the law. You can't come in.
It's all made up.
No, it isn't. You can't.
He made it up.
No, it isn't. It's D.C. Circuit law. He's got to follow the D.C. Circuit.
No, he made it up. Do you think you Saul Weisenberg, do not think we have a problem with runaway judges in this country? They're just making a law on the bench.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying I agree with Judge Bates' decision, but it is a mainstream decision. And all he said was, if he had wanted to be like one of these California judges,
he's worse than the California
he would have said, I vacate it right away. He says, you've got 90 days. You were sloppy, is what he said. You've got 90 days to give me a better reason.
You should have permanent injunction.
Hold on, Harmeet and then Scott.
Well, Harmeet didn't have a problem with a permanent nationwide injunction when it was a conservative judge in Texas invalidating
exactly.
Well,
I don't think it should. Scott, you raise a good point. I think that the Democrats should be very concerned about this as well, because the tables will be turned one day, and it is not the place of judges who are an equal branch, not a superior branch, to be issuing nationwide injunctions on the basis of 2 or 3 people in front of them. That's outrageous, and it's not precedented in our history. But this judge did go further, Laura, than the judge in California. He issued some partial summary judgment here with no trial.
Partial.
He just sort of made up some of these rulings that make no sense. And finally, one important point is that President Obama himself in 2012 when he signed the DACA order, he said this is a temporary measure. This is a stopgap. This is to give hope to some people until Congress acts. It isn't now it's being converted into a permanent
law, permanent fixture. All right, guys, we got to get into Comey. Comey made a comment. I want to play this for all of you. Scott, you can react. This is what he said tonight on CNN. Let's watch.
After I was fired, I put together a legal team of 3 people, one of whom was Professor Dan Richman at Columbia University. After I had asked him to give this information to the media, I separately gave my legal team 4 memos, which were unclassified. They included the one that he had gotten to give the substance of it to the New York Times. The bottom line is, I see no credible claim by any serious person that that violated the law.
Scott, no problem. A couple of memos were confidential. 4 of them were not.
Absolutely, and because they were not confidential or seen as secret and what have you, no problem. And I guarantee you this, under the Trump administration, if they really thought that he had leaked secret documents or classified documents, he'd be prosecuted right now. What's the delay? You've yelled and screamed about this for months about him leaking, but what about the substance of those documents, which is the real issue, and why hasn't he been prosecuted if he's broken the law with the Republican administration that he's at war with right now?
Saul.
Why not?
Saul.
Well, as a practical matter, it doesn't matter because he's judgment-proof in D.C. There's no D.C. jury, even if he was ever prosecuted, that would ever convict Jim Comey. They're not going to convict anybody who's an enemy of Trump. So
because
they're looking at it.
He's done nothing wrong, Saul.
Oh, yeah, he did nothing wrong.
He's done
The regulation for DOJ says you can't traffic, trade, or transfer government property, even if it's not.
Why hasn't he been prosecuted?
It's government property.
Why hasn't he been prosecuted?
It's government property. He had no business giving.
Why wasn't Hillary prosecuted? What do you mean
it's government property, whether it's classified or not. He had no business whatsoever turning it over to his buddy. He's done a lot of things wrong that aren't necessarily criminal. He's really acted shamefully, beginning with what he did in 2016.
All right, tonight, today we had the travel ban arguments, guys. I'm a quick soundbite. This is Justice Anthony Kennedy. Many think a swing vote on the court with the travel ban oral argument. Let's listen.
Suppose you have a local mayor, and as a candidate, he makes vituperative, hateful statements. He's elected, and on day 2, he takes acts that are consistent with those hateful statements. That's whatever he said in the campaign is irrelevant.
Harmeet, he played both sides in the oral argument questioning. In that case, in that question, he seemed to indicate that he was siding with those who would strike down the travel ban. What's your take?
Well, I mean, Laura, I think they did play both sides, several of the judges, but most of the conservative judges seem to be siding with the administration on this. And so I think this case is up in the air. I would be foolish to make a prediction here. I think they thought about it very carefully. Ultimately, I think the Trump administration should win this, but obviously, you know, there are politics and there are very strong feelings. We heard some rhetoric about you know, flipping the tables and what if a candidate made anti-Semitic remarks. One of the liberal judges said that. So I know they're thinking that way, but you know, ultimately, if they look at the 4 corners of the law, I think that hopefully it should be
or the Constitution. Scott, prediction: will it be upheld or struck down?
I certainly hope it'll be struck down, but a tough case here. Trump's biggest problem and DOJ's biggest problem is they do have broad authority, but Trump's own statements, political and outside the courtroom, he's his own worst witness, and the judges have to grapple with that. I don't think they can ignore his statements, whether they're inconsistent or not.
They can, depending on what their depending on what their jurisprudence is.
But as a practical matter, sure, but as a practical matter, they know what they know, and I think it's a real problem.
Well, for once, Scott is halfway right.
Yeah,
the problem isn't what he said before the election. It's what President has said and tweeted since the election. He's got to watch that. We've talked about that before.
All right, guys, fantastic segment. I feel like I got extra, you know, did I get any continuing legal education credit with that segment? When we return, I'll reveal exclusive information tonight about how forces in America kept Mexican authorities from fully disbanding that illegal immigrant. Welcome back to the Ingraham Angle. I can reveal to you exclusively tonight some blockbuster new information about that caravan of illegal immigrants arriving on our southern border. A source close to the Mexican government told me today that after Mexico had effectively disbanded the caravan and deported many of its members, there are American media outlets, including CNN, along with various NGOs in the United States, whipped up a lot of stuff that helped reconstitute the caravan and indeed recruit new members. And then it started chugging its way to Tijuana. And what happened is a narrative was created that helped, as I said, recruit new members and convince those already in the caravan to keep the party going. Well, they sold these individuals as political refugees, of course, when most are seeking asylum based on purely economic reasons because they want a better way of life. And this top source also told me that the caravan was basically finished until CNN reporters sympathetically focused on the plight almost exclusively of women and children in the caravan.
Many of them coming from Honduras, telling us that they are fleeing violence, political corruption, as well as poverty, trying to make their way north. And they say it doesn't matter what President Trump says or if President Trump sends the National Guard to the U.S.-Mexico border, they will find a way to get north.
Women and children, you see that shot? Those were almost all men, just one woman. What? What else don't we know about who's in the caravan? Just last week, according to the Border Patrol, an MS-13 gang member tried to sneak into the country pretending to be an unaccompanied minor. In last week's Angle, remember, we exposed how American attorneys may try to use our lax asylum laws to force us to take in hundreds of these illegal immigrants, conducting these seminars, and so forth. For reaction, we're joined by Congressman Steve King of Iowa, member of an Immigration and Border Security Subcommittee in Congress. It's good to see you, but this is disturbing. I mean, this is just wild what's happening. You have these lawyers, including this guy who's one of the lead lawyers in this effort, Alex Mensing. He's a project coordinator for Pueblos Sin Fronteras, which is organizing this effort to help these, help the caravans. And the concern, Congressman, is that we have American lawyers and other non-governmental organizations almost working hand in glove, de facto, with media outlets to push Mexico. There's a Mexican election coming up in a few months, put the political pressure on Mexico, and as I said, keep it all going. So they make their way up to Tijuana, and then what?
Watching this caravan make its way towards the United States and divert towards Tijuana, and seeing the way they're facilitating this with the media and with the immigration attorneys, of which the Immigration Attorney Organization has at least 15,000 members in the United States of that organization. There's federal statutes that prohibit and create a felony for contributing and aiding and abetting illegal immigration. They'd better have their laws right if they're going to go to a foreign country and help facilitate an unarmed invasion into the United States. But we are weak on our asylum laws. And that asylum law was passed by voice in the middle of the night after everybody left for the airport for Christmas vacation.
When?
A few years ago. Several years. I don't have the exact year. But I looked it up and I read the text of that. And they were ready to gavel out, and everybody headed to the airport, and it was set up to be this was back during the Pelosi era when she was in the speaker and when Harry Reid.
Let me explain to people who don't understand. When you claim asylum when you say you have a credible fear of persecution for a variety of reasons. I mean, it's really lax. It's for race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group. I don't even know what that means. And political opinion. God, some of us feel persecuted for having a political opinion here. But for those grounds, you can claim asylum. And overwhelmingly, the immigration judges have granted asylum or allowed people to be released. Then they never come back for their hearing or deportation proceedings.
Even the coyotes train them what to say. So when they arrive,
workshops. They're doing these workshops with these migrants.
I stood up on the cliff outside of Roma, Texas, a few years ago, and watched them inflate the raft, bring a pregnant lady across with two coyotes escorting a pregnant lady. They brought it up to the shore in the grass, helped her out, handed her 2 little ditty bags of her possessions, and she stood and patiently waited for the Border Patrol to come along to claim credible fear.
Well, why haven't Republicans in Congress done anything, really, to change this law? I know you've been a staunch advocate of strengthening our immigration laws. Non-contiguous countries, meaning other than Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, Salvador, Central America, and beyond, if they show up at our border and they throw themselves at a Border Patrol agent, they don't have to cross the border, just show up. They can get asylum in the United States very easily, or at least be released into the United States easily. We must have a new law that says you can be expeditiously and immediately removed back to your country, like you are if you're a Mexican. Mexicans don't have that ability. Only other than Mexicans have that ability to be released back into the United States. That's nuts. And we talked about this one judge in D.C. who's just part of the judicial tyranny now.
Well, just changing the language for asylum, the credible fear language. We went on and did a tour of the border last October with Chairman Bob Goodlatte and others. We went through the court system. We saw a lot of what was going on. But that simple change is written into the Davis-Oliver Act. It's got a lot of enforcement provisions in it.
Well, where is this act, Davis-Oliver?
This act is it's looking for a way to come to the floor and be debated.
Okay, so Paul Ryan, he's not going to bring it to the floor.
It seemed to me that the votes were a little short because it's tied up in some of the Republicans insist on DACA amnesty as part of anything we do.
Here we go. So we go back to the amnesty.
It's a tug of war.
You cannot just do something that protects the American people, that protects our sovereignty, our borders, our health, our national security. You can't just do that for the American people without a big giveaway to illegal immigrants. Is that correct?
And I
mean, people watching this like they just want to throw something at the TV.
And Laura,
now,
on top of this, though,
I do, and I'm hosting the show.
The president, whom I support, promised that he was going to end DACA, but he served up DACA as DACA amnesty.
I don't talk about that. That drove me crazy too. 13,000.
What I'm saying is we shouldn't make a deal between the rule of law and amnesty.
I completely agree. 13,186. 13,186 UAMs. Know the acronym, unaccompanied minors under 17, have already been released this year in fiscal year 2018.
And Laura, I could guarantee you that they were driven to, bused to, or flown to all 50 states. The records show that
sponsors. They go to sponsors.
And they may go to an address in Las Vegas. Who knows? It could be a coyote house. It could be a drug smuggling house.
MS-13, as we saw it?
MS-13. And I was in Arizona when we collared an MS-13. And when they busted him for a pickup load of marijuana, 240 pounds, he had this tattoo on his arm, 13. I saw it with my eyes, and I unloaded that marijuana, 240 pounds of it. It is a stunning thing when you put your eyes on it. You walk into those warehouses, you go into those jails, about 81% male by the data I'm looking at, and some of those youth have a little gray in their beard, Laura.
Well, oh, I get it. So they might not be 17 years old, Congressman. We got to get something done. Thank you so much for your advocacy and work on this. And up next in Seen and Unseen, the media focuses on the First Lady's hat while missing the real story. Time now for our Seen and Unseen segment. Someone just ran by the set. Isn't that says Orson Welles?
That's the Seen and Unseen.
Yes, this is right. See, this is fun. It's live TV. That's right? I think that's what makes it fun. You know it's live.
I'm going to do puppets later.
On tap tonight, the Orwellian nightmare of socialized medicine exposed by the plight of a dying child. Kanye West strikes again, making liberal heads spin after tweeting support for Trump. And to put it all in perspective, we're joined by Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo. Raymond, the media coverage of the First Lady yesterday, though, focused on her hat.
Her hat. And Stephen Colbert kind of captured it in this clip. Watch.
Okay, great.
Today, the two men addressed the crowd, and there was an awkward moment. Trump goes for the kiss, and oh, saved by the hat. That is more than a hat. That is a defensive perimeter. Their deal is either she gets to wear the hat or Trump has to wear a cone.
We call that the cone of shame on my dog.
There was actually coverage, mainstream coverage of this idea. And the narrative is that the Trumps are distant, that they're loveless, that they don't contact. Here's the bottom line.
What do they want them to do, like make out in front of everybody?
I guess. But they're depriving Melania of a really important moment. This woman yesterday pulled off.
Fabulous.
Michelle Obama, when she was running the White House, or Laura Bush before her, they had teams of people,
oh my God,
hundreds
they hired
to organize.
Consultants, professional party planners.
To do these state dinners.
Desiree Rogers screwed up the whole state dinner. People snuck in. Remember that?
Well, but Melania Trump did this all on her own. She assembled a team of 10 people, just her staff.
No, her staff.
It's her staff.
She did it.
She went over the protocol, the history of state dinners.
All everything.
And she knows the flowers, the lights, the whole thing. She should be given credit for that, not maligned for not grabbing the hand when it was presented. She did hold his hand. She did indeed let him kiss her. So this narrative, I'm tired of this narrative.
No, they cannot give her one moment. This was an elegant, wonderful, beautiful presentation of America to France, and with a French touch and the New Orleans stuff.
Oh, jambalaya and
oh,
the
no,
flowers,
I don't want to mention New Orleans to you. You're annoying.
You're waving everybody off tonight.
I know. I'm a wave.
Don't wave me. Keep your hand down for this next segment.
I like when we're in double boxes. It's better than being on the set.
because you don't like me next year.
No, exactly. Alfie Evans. This was this is another infuriating case.
Horrible.
The National Health Service in Britain is preventing parents from giving medical assistance to their child. Tell us, this is so heartbreaking.
This little boy came in December of 2016. He was brought to the hospital with an infection. He's been on a respirator. They said if you take the respirator out, he would die. He wouldn't be able to breathe on his own. Well, it's been out since Monday. His parents fought to keep the respirator
because they don't want to pay the money. They don't want to spend the money. They say it's going to, the National Health
Service in Britain, they look at an actuarial table and they say,
it's not a human life.
Does the cost exceed the quality of life? And in the case of this little baby who has a degenerative brain disease, they say he should be cut off. No more care.
So
the parents are fighting. They want him to have care. The father went to see the Pope last week in desperation. The Pope not only blessed his effort, he interceded. The Pope sent the head of the Bambino Gesù in Rome to Liverpool, England. She is standing there. The doctors won't meet with her. There is a medical jet waiting to take this child to Italy to get medical treatment. They won't release him.
The Pope wants to take the baby and help the baby, and the National Health Service won't let the Pope and give him Italian citizenship too.
They gave him Italian citizenship.
This is ridiculous.
They won't let him free. Now why? I'll tell you why. Because it's a shame. It would be a blight on the face of this national health care, which has become its own religion.
Dehumanized.
To have a citizen go elsewhere for medical care. They'd rather let the child die in hospital, and that's
so the child is suffering now because it's being denied food and hydration as well, or food?
Well, they're giving it some hydration now, but let me tell you, the networks in the United States, 28 minutes of coverage to the royal birth, none to Alfie Evans.
It would have been
that
nice
is an
if
outrage.
The Queen made some statement about that.
Well, and William and Kate as well. But good news, lots of prayer services happening around the country. In New York tomorrow at noon at the UN. Also, Notre Dame today and other schools.
Let's pray for a miracle here. Let's pray for a miracle. All right, now this has had the Twitter sphere going crazy. I'm just glad when it's not focused on me.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm glad when I'm not trending.
It's a good day when it's
I'm not trending.
On you.
But what is trending is Kanye West, who I had a problem with when he took old Taylor Swift's award out of her hand. Remember that old deal? It was Kanye, right?
That was Kanye.
It was Kanye at the Grammys.
He is a free radical.
And now he was a pal of Trump's kind of. He kind of palled around with Trump.
But now he issued this tweet today, which reads,
look at it.
He, of course, the Make America Great hat again. But then he came out and said he loves Trump and no mob is going to dissuade him from that love. He is being attacked, as you can imagine.
He must have watched our Defending the First series that we've been doing on the Ingraham angle, because we've been defending people's right to just have different opinions.
I'm of two minds on this. I'll just make this quick.
You're a big hip-hop fan.
I'm a big
right up with Frank Sinatra's Capitol Records sessions.
But here's the idea. I'm not sure if he's trying to promote his upcoming 2 albums and his line, line of clothing, or if this is truly a cry for freedom of speech and might be an opening in a community that has been monolithic. We'll see.
And didn't another hip-hopper come out?
Yeah, Chance the Rapper came out and said, not all black people have to be Democrats. This is an interesting
day. So he's taking a chance.
Taking a chance.
That is so
there it is. There's
the
tweet.
Black people, good.
So we'll see where this leads.
Hopefully
this will start a conversation.
Ooh,
why can't there be white liberals and white conservatives and black liberals and black conservatives?
Everyone has to think the same. It has to be monolithic in one race. It's
diversity
ridiculous.
is more fun.
Let's prayers for baby Alfie. Raymond, thank you so much. And you're going to want to stick around to see this next segment. The media are telling us that a congressional victory for the GOP in Arizona is actually a win for the Democrats. Isn't that cute? When is a win not a win? Well, when the left doesn't like the result. Then the spinning begins. Republican Debbie Lesko won a special election for Congress in Arizona last night, but we were told that that's really bad news for the president.
We saw a tremendous shift in an ancestrally Republican land, and when you put all the numbers together, it's just not good for them.
If that were translated across the country, the Democrats would easily win the House, and then I think Senate seats.
Members of Congress, they can sniff a wave when they see one, and there are a lot of canaries in this coal mine.
There is real serious consideration that they may lose the United States Senate as well.
Not only is there a wave, but Republicans are kind of running for the hills at this point.
Running for the hills. Joining us now to analyze the analysts are former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino in Florida, and in New York, Chris Hahn, a Democrat and a former aide to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Okay, Chris, let's start with you. Look, I think both sides do this at times. When Obama wins big in a district, and then there's an election, and the Republican or the Democrat only wins by 7, then the Republicans might say something. But this is kind of a weird deal because it's a special election. It's not a regularly scheduled election, so it's always going to be fairly low voter turnout. So I think the Democrats were kind of hyping this a little much.
Well, look, I think that the swing here was significant mostly because of the demographics of that district. Let me just explain. The average age of the voter there is 60 years old. And that is a voter that tends to be reliably Republican. And the fact that this race was as close as it was with those demographics is particularly troubling to Republicans who I've been talking to all day. There were other races around the country where there were swings last night, too, including here in New York, where a Democrat took an assembly seat that had been held by Republicans for the last 40 years, and he took it by 18 points. So there's a mood among Republicans that there might be some changes in the air, and they've got a lot of work to do. And like they said, like one of the people quoted before said, you extrapolate that 15-point swing across the country, and it is devastating. But more importantly, if you look at the demographics here, mostly white, older, that is really bad, especially given the fact that the candidate that the Democrats put up there was pretty much a mainstream Democrat, did not separate herself from Washington Democrats, and there was nothing wrong with the Republican candidate. She was not some crazy wacko.
Gotta go to Dan. Okay, we got it. Dan, go ahead.
Listen, I have no doubt, Laura, that the Democrats are probably going to pick up some seats in these midterms. I mean, what do you expect? The media's been on a 24-hour conspiracy news network tirade on a fake Russian collusion fairy tale against Donald Trump. They've been calling him anything that ends in an isterophobe, for a phobophobic istophobe for the last year. Of course there's going to be some anti-Trump anger. But here's the problem, Laura. I concede one point to Chris. Yes, there's probably going to be some good wins by the Democrats for them, not for us. But if this turns out to be a blue puddle rather than a blue tidal wave, they're in a lot of trouble. Why, Laura? Because they're solely invested in impeachment, and they can't do it without taking the House.
You know what, guys? Another point I think we should think about is Congress itself and Republicans in Congress have not done enough to enact the president's agenda. I think that's part of the kind of, if Republicans are kind of dispirited, it's not because of the economy. The economy is doing really well. They're dispirited because the Republicans aren't getting it done. They didn't repeal Obamacare. The wall's not being built. They spent a lot of money in this omnibus. So, I mean, if you're a Republican, like, this Congress is lame. And maybe Debbie Lesko is going to be better, and hopefully she will be. We got to move on. We got another topic. I got to disagree.
Can I just disagree?
Okay, go quick.
Let me just disagree with you. This election is going to be about Trump and nobody else, period.
Okay, well, gentlemen, stay right there. Now, let's look specifically at how the left and the media are portraying conservatives, Republicans, and the right. Now, remember when then-candidate Obama made these famous remarks?
It's not surprising, then, that they get better and they claim to guns or religion or antipathy towards people who aren't like them.
Or when Hillary said this about Trump voters?
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right?
Bitter clinger, deplorables, and now CNN's Jim Acosta is in trouble for saying this about Trump supporters.
People around the country don't know it's an act. They're not in on the act, and take what he says very seriously. They don't have all their faculties in some cases. Their elevator might not hit all floors. My concern is that that a journalist is going to be hurt one of these days. Somebody's going to get hurt.
After a backlash, Acosta denied today that he was referring to Trump supporters and even mocking mental illness. Now, what's really going on here? Chris, I'll get to you on this. He really is echoing the refrain of the elites. They're dumb. They're troglodytes. They drive, around. They go around in Ford F-150s. They got the gun rack on top. And I wrote a book years ago called Power to the People. It was all about how the elites look down on the regular working class people of this country. That's how they lost the last election. That's how they lost in 2010, and they made fun of the Tea Party. And they haven't learned anything. And Acosta's just a member of that crowd. It doesn't surprise me at all.
All I could say is, wah. I don't know when CNN became a safe space for conservatives. I'm sorry if their snowflake tendencies were disrupted by what he said. But look, I am a liberal who goes on Fox News. I have been called a lot worse than that.
That's why we love you.
I have no sympathy for any of it.
No, but we don't call, but I don't call all Democrats mental or they don't have all. I mean, that was wild. That's a reporter. That's not a commentator. You're an analyst / commentator. He's supposed to be a reporter calling balls and strikes. At least that's what we're led to believe. But Dan, hold on. I got to get Dan on this. He has been a rabid anti-Trump reporter for CNN, which I think is one of the reasons why CNN, again, God bless them, I've lost so many viewers over the years, because there's no reporters, they're all opinion makers.
You know, I have to say, Laura, for as much as I like Chris off the air, on the air, we love to rip each other's throats out. And this is how I know that we're winning a little bit in the culture war on the right. Chris has actually co-opted one of our terms, snowflakes, to describe us. This is how I know we're fighting back and winning, that it really bothers Chris. Now, here's what Chris knows, Laura, that he's not telling you. And I know this. Chris knows his party has zero agenda. Here's their agenda. Give us your money, give us your health care, and by the way, send your kids to a bunch of crappy schools, no school choice. They have no agenda. So Chris is married exclusively to identity politics, deplorable politics, and to do that, you have to come in like the savior. Look, we're going to come in. We're going to save the minority community, the Muslim community, you know, females. We're going to save you from those rapacious Republicans. That's what's going on. They have nothing else.
Go ahead, Chris.
Dan, look, we're not married to any of that. We're not married to impeachment. I think that it doesn't even matter what the Democrats care about. This election is going to be about Donald Trump.
But Chris, you're making his point. Dan. Yeah, but hold on.
I agree, Chris.
Chris is making your point. I think it's almost like the Democrats have given up on offering solutions or ideas, proposals to raise the standard of living for the average American. Like all you guys, hold on. But what I'm telling you, what I see, I've been around Washington for far too long. There's a lot of you're a xenophobe, you're anti-immigrant, you're anti-black, you're anti-LGBT, you're anti, Bob Mueller, impeachment, Bob Mueller, racist. I mean, that's what it is. Where are the proposals about raising standard of living for average Americans? There are no proposals.
Laura, there's tons of those.
Really?
There's tons of those proposals.
You said they're running on Trump. Look, that's all they're running on.
Hold on. No, they're not. The people are voting on Trump. I have been on campaigns my entire life. And this guy has taken all the oxygen out of the debate. It is all about him. It's not about the Republican and what they may or may not want to do. It's not about the Democrat and what they may or may not do. It's about Donald Trump and what he's doing. And the people who are going to come out, the margin of victory this year is not going to be about him.
Go ahead,
Chris is making our point. While the elitist Democrat snobs, they knock the deplorables for being the uneducated ignoramus class, what Chris is actually saying is his party stands for nothing. They're only running on one thing. We're not the guy in the White House. We have nothing to offer you. We have no economic
And there's no Obama in the wings.
That's not what I said, Dan.
Exactly.
That's not what I said. What I said was it doesn't matter what any candidate on either side of this debate says during this election. This election will be about Donald Trump.
Well, I'll take that. He's growing the economy. We might have a deal with North Korea, and we're getting back on the trade track. I love it. I mean, okay, let's make that the referendum. No problem whatsoever.
For the Republicans.
All right, guys. The PC police don't seem to think boys deserve their own safe spaces. Now the girls want to join the Boy Scouts and are joining. The fallout next. Gun admitting 3,000 girls into their ranks. 170 troops nationwide have begun a soft launch program after the organization revised its rules in October. This may make the virtue signalers feel good, but at what cost? Let's discuss that with Charlie Kirk, the founder and executive director of Turning Point USA, a fabulous group, who's also an Eagle Scout. Charlie, now I'm really impressed. I was impressed with Turning Point, but now you're really cool. Okay, so what's the problem with having girls in Boy Scouts other than it kind of messes up the description of the group's name?
You know, I always said, Laura, I said, well, things are getting really bad, but what's next? Are they going to really let girls into the Boy Scouts? And yeah, now here's where we are. You know, I'll tell you, here's what's wrong with it. Social psychologists will tell you that in the development phase of young men in particular, there's something quite special and quite important with being around just other young boys. As soon as you put a singular young lady in that environment, their behavioral pattern changes completely. They try to impress that young woman. The way they act, the way that they interact totally changes. And look, the Boy Scouts have been unbelievably successful over the last 100 years of turning boys into men and creating some of America's greatest leaders, whether it be Neil Armstrong or U.S. presidents or U.S. senators. And so I'm trying to understand what the motive behind this is, and really the conclusion I've come to is the political correct virtue signaling left, they like to destroy things that work. They want to destroy core cultural institutions.
Well, it's attack on masculinity. It's, traditional
exactly.
masculinity.
Totally.
That's toxic. It's toxic masculinity now. So you bring girls in, it's less toxic. I want to have you listen to a comment from a father about his daughter who wants to be an Eagle Scout. Let's watch.
To think that my daughter could be an Eagle Scout. I want that for my sons, but yesterday I didn't know that my daughter could be an Eagle Scout. And today she could if she wants to. And that makes me incredibly proud.
So he said, look, my daughter's, you know, it's fantastic. She gets to reach this pinnacle just like the boys.
Well, what do you say to the sons that want to join the Girl Scouts? Is that okay now? I mean, why doesn't she just join the Girl Scouts? Which, by the way, is a wonderful institution. It's been around just about as long as the Boy Scouts. And here's the real problem, is that this whole move by the Boy Scouts of America is going to destroy the Girl Scouts of America. There is an institution that is designed programmatically to try to have leadership development for young women. And so that's the real problem here. Is that it's going to destroy this other organization just to try to increase membership for the Boy Scouts.
And by the way, Charlie,
point,
hold on, Charlie. We have a statement. It came out in October when this decision was first made, before it was implemented. This is Patricia Meller, CEO of the Girl Scouts of Green and White Mountains Service of Vermont and New Hampshire. To me, a daughter is not a matter of convenience. You've made the choice for your son based on what you thought was best for him, and the daughter should be getting a similar decision. We know facts prove that the Girl Scout program is a better program for the girls and young women we serve. And it goes on and on about how, you know, they're not happy, obviously, because they think it's going to destroy the Girl Scouts.
And it will. And look, the Girl Scouts already had trouble, you know, recruiting and trying to grow their membership, and this is only going to it's going to obliterate that. But the broader point is this, and you see this happening throughout our culture, and this is such an important cultural issue, and politics are always downstream from culture, is that the postmodernists want to redefine truth, and they want to destroy things that work. And the Boy Scouts of America for 100 years has been one core cultural institution that has turned boys into men. And now we are severely jeopardizing that by inserting young ladies into the Boy Scouts. And look, I can't understand why we just can't try to improve the Girl Scouts and we have to try to put them into the Boy Scouts. And as an Eagle Scout, as someone that has benefited from this program personally, I'm so disappointed. But unfortunately, with the trend of this country, I'm not surprised.
All right, Charlie Kirk, thank you so much. We'll be right back with the tweets of the night. Will yours be chosen? That came my way about tonight's show from Vicky. Your angle this evening, April 25th, hit the nail on the head with these district judges controlling our lives. Congress should get this under control, drain the swamp. And from Adam, I love Raymond Arroyo. He has an interesting several news stories each week. Oh, we all love Raymond. And from Lisa, dude, a judge in Cali shouldn't make decisions that negatively impact me in Connecticut. Abuse of power and judge shopping at its worst. From Sarah, sick and tired of Republicans doing nothing about illegal immigration. Wow, that's a lot. That's not just one or two. I love it. Remember, tweet me at Ingraham Angle. I'll see you on radio tomorrow morning. That's all the time we have. But guess what? You are